Welcome into UGA Football Live with JC Shelton, where the dogs come to talk. What is up, Dog Nation? Welcome in. Thanks for joining the show. Got a great show planned for you today. It's our celebration part 2 episode because that's how many titles Georgia has won in the last 2 seasons. And to help us celebrate, I'm joined by Georgia kicking legend, Rodrigo Hot Rod Blankenship. Respect the specs. Respect the specs. He joins the show. First time getting to speak with Hot Rod, so it's going to be a fun conversation that'll come up later. For now, I do want to note that I plan for this show to be released on Sunday. And as you know, tragedy struck the University of Georgia as offensive lineman Devin Willock and staffer Chandler LaCroix were killed in a single vehicle car crash early Sunday morning. Our thoughts and prayers will always be with the Willock and LaCroix families and the University of Georgia and the people that knew Devin and Chandler. It was really tough to see this happen, and especially after a celebration Saturday where we had the championship parade and the whole University of Georgia and Dog Nation was there to celebrate these guys, and that happened Sunday morning early. It's still tough to get over, and it's not easy to move on here with this show, but let's keep paying our respects as we celebrate the championships that both Devin and Chandler contributed to. They helped bring it to the University of Georgia and Dog Nation, and I want to keep honoring them as we talk through this offseason and for seasons to come. Always remember Devin and Chandler in your prayers and thoughts. I hope you were able to make it to Athens on Saturday for the celebration parade. I did. It was a great time. Little chilly. Sun was out, though, and we got to see this team get honored, and it was a madhouse. So many people here. They did close out half the season, the stadium, which was interesting. They're doing renovations on that right side, and probably has to do with the freezing cold temperatures that we had a couple weeks ago. I had a friend who does Georgia plumbing. He showed me the water that was coming off of Sanford Stadium in those steps. So half the stadium was shut off, and I wish they would have opened that up for everybody to come, and everybody could have came without tickets. Just everybody welcome. But it was still a great day, and we got to hear Kirby Smart and a bunch of players speak. So it was great to see that for a second time. And my third championship parade in 2 years. Braves fan here, as you can see from my setup. I got, for the listeners, I got an Acuna and an Austin Riley jersey behind me, along with my AJ Green. Big Braves fan. We had 3 championships as a Georgia sports fan the last 2 years, and I hope more to come. And with this team, the way that Georgia's dominated the last 2 seasons, and Kirby Smart and this Georgia staff and the recruiting efforts, I think we'll have another shot at a couple, maybe a few more here soon. Let's get into the show, and we'll start with a bunch of recruits who are in attendance on Saturday. And Georgia actually closed the deal with 2 of those prospects on Monday. Justice Terry, who is the number 4 defensive tackle in the 2025 class, he committed, and then he is the number 4 DT, right? 4-star out of Manchester, Georgia, number 17 overall recruit in his class. 4-star offensive tackle Micah DeBose also committed on Monday. He's the number 4 offensive tackle in the class. He's the number 50 prospect overall. So he's out of Mobile, Alabama. I think he's like the number 4 player in Alabama as well. So 2 really big-time gets for Georgia on that line of scrimmage in the 2025 class. These kids were only sophomores. As it stands now, Georgia holds a number 2 class in 23, number 1 classes in 24 and 25. So Kirby Smart didn't need 2 titles under his belt to bring in top classes before, but it's clear with this program at the top consistently, it only makes UGA a place where kids want to be. The NFL draft picks also contribute to that. Of course, NFL record 15 last year. It looks like there will be upwards of 10 or more this season in this draft. So we will, of course, break that down leading up to the draft, get you some profiles and see where these guys are projected to go. But let's take a look at the roster here. Each Bulldog that has declared for the draft, and then those who have entered the transfer portal. Quite a few on both sides here. So To the NFL, running back Kenny McIntosh, wide receiver Kearis Jackson, guard Warren Erickson, tackle Warren McClendon, tackle Broderick Jones, cornerback Keely Ringo, safety Chris Smith, defensive tackle Jalen Carter, edge Robert Beal, and edge Nolan Smith have all declared for the draft. So, interesting enough, the declaration for all underclassmen to enter the draft was on Monday. This is a Tuesday, so this means that left guard Xavier Truss and center Cedric Van Pran will return to Georgia unless they declared, and no one knows about it because I double-checked. They still haven't declared. So this is huge for Georgia. Both started for the Bulldogs this season. Truss really improved throughout the season. He had to fight for that left guard job this season. Rotated in with Devin Willock, rest in peace. Had a great championship game, Truss did. Van Pran has been the anchor on that Georgia offensive line, and that center is a very important position on the offensive line. Makes a lot of calls, off course, touches the ball every snap. You can ask former Georgia guards and tackles that I've talked to about that. The center, very important position for these guys, and Cedric Van Pran has held that down for the last 2 seasons, started every game. Also on this list is receiver Ladd McConkey. Didn't expect him to declare, but he is not, according to the deadline. This receiver room next year is going to be deadly with McConkey, AD, Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint, Dylan Bell, the additions of MSU transfer Ra Thomas, Mizzou transfer Dominic Lovett. They both led their teams in receiving in the SEC last year. So this receiver room, and then you take Carson Beck, the experience that he has coming in and how long he's spent in this system. As long as Todd Monken returns, I think Carson Beck can really sling this rock. He showed it in the NFL draft, NFL day, pro day, right? He threw for these receivers, and Georgia receivers picked him to throw. I think that says a lot, and I'm hoping to see Carson Beck and see him perform under pressure. That's what we haven't seen, but we'll see. Lastly, before we get on to my convo with Hot Rod 2, let's review the transfer portal list as it stands now. So quite a few dogs here. A lot of them waited until after the championship to enter the portal, and they told Kirby Smart that. Kirby Smart said he was aware of some of the players who wanted to enter the transfer portal, but they decided to not do that and help the team to a national title. Good move for those guys. And let's start with Tresman Marshall here, Georgia linebacker. He's moving on, hasn't picked a destination yet. MJ Sherman, former 5-star. He's on the edge, right? He actually committed to Nebraska this past weekend. Jaheim Singletary, 5-star cornerback in last year's class. He's moving on. Not sure where yet. Jacob Hood, 4-star tackle out of last year's class. He's moving on. No destination yet. Rylan Godey, who we've had on the show a couple times, he is moving on as a grad transfer. All good luck to these guys, and you're always a dog, right? Dominic Blaylock. This one hurt a little bit for me just because I know how good of a player Dominic is and his mindset and his toughness coming off of 2 ACL tears. This is going to be a loaded receiver room next year, so I don't blame these guys for moving on and trying to get a better situation for themselves and their future. He hasn't picked a destination yet. Georgia tight end Brett Seither, he is moving on. He's committed to Georgia Tech, interesting enough. Athens to Atlanta. Eric Gilbert, of course, in the portal, hasn't decided on a destination yet. He was the first Georgia Bulldog to enter the portal after Bill Norton, who he is on to Arizona. Let's see. Oh, and then we have additions, right? So Georgia has 3 additions via the portal. Smoke Bowie, who was a former Georgia commit in last year's class, went to A&M, and now he has transferred to Georgia. So he will be at corner for Georgia, and losing Keely Ringo, hopefully Smoke can come in and contribute. Ra Thomas from Mississippi State and Dominic Lovett, who we just spoke on. They are the additions as well. So some big-time players for Georgia. All of those guys I just mentioned who are additions are former 4-star recruits and with playing time in the SEC. So let's see if they can contribute. Georgia's going to lose a few, right, via portal, via NFL. They reloaded last year. We didn't think they were, so I expect these guys to keep on going, keep the train rolling in Athens, and we'll see what happens during the offseason. Still a bunch of time left for guys to enter the portal. So let's get in now to my conversation with former Georgia Bulldog, NFL kicker, one of the best Georgia kickers to ever do it in Athens, Hot Rod Blankenship. Welcome in, everybody. If you're watching on YouTube or listening via podcast, appreciate you joining and listening in to our second YouTube show, UGA Football Live on the Pulse Network. We got a special guest, and this show is titled The Celebration Part 2. Part 2 being the second national title in a row for the Georgia Bulldogs. So the win over TCU, dominant win, obviously 65-7. And to join us today, none other than Georgia legend. He says not really, but I think you guys will agree. Rodrigo Hot Rod Blankenship. Rodrigo, what is up, man? Tell Dog Nation how you're doing. And I know you're recovering from a hip injury, you said. I hope that goes well. But how are you doing? And how are things as a former Georgia Bulldog watching the Dogs win like they did?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me today. I appreciate it. Obviously, I just put out an announcement on my social platforms that I recently had hip surgery in Birmingham, Alabama, and I am rehabbing now. I'm hoping that I will be healthy and kicking again around the time that teams are, in their OTAs and their spring ball, and that I can get picked up and, try and go win a job somewhere. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. Obviously, still very early going with the recovery process. My surgery was like this time last week. It was last Friday.
Wow.
So still, very fresh on the new hip here. But I've just been rehabbing, and obviously, like you said, being a former Georgia Bulldog, it's obviously been a great time these last 2 years. Getting to see the Dogs go back to back and repeat as national champions. I feel like this is kind of peak time for Dog Nation for sure.
Yeah, no, it is, and it's incredible to think. And growing up, I think you're a Georgia native, right? I think you are.
Right.
Yeah, and growing up a Georgia sports fan, like I'm sure you did. And championships don't come easy. Playing in them don't even come easy. And now we've won 2 in a row. Went to one, of course, in 2017-18 right there. And that was a tough loss. And I know you were part of that one.
That one hurt.
Dude, I bet. After that game, what was Kirby Smart's speech to you guys? I'm curious about that.
Yeah. Like you said, it's very difficult to go to a championship of any kind in any collegiate or professional sport. I mean, even going back to high school, like it's hard to go to a state championship. It's hard to go to the championship for whatever you're doing. I'm growing up a Georgia sports fan. I was for a while. I was a pretty big Hawks fan, Falcons fan, Atlanta Thrashers fan. I know a lot of people don't even know about the Thrashers anymore because that's like, a long time ago. But
bring them back. Yeah,
exactly. I was a fan, and obviously, championships were pretty few and far between. Braves as well. Obviously, the Braves have won a World Series now recently, but at the time they were kind of in a dry spell there. So for Georgia sports, definitely, championships were kind of few and far between for me growing up. But yeah, I mean, now that, Coach Smart has, taken over, now been to 3 national championship games in the last 6 years, which is pretty outstanding for the program, and has won the last 2 of them. It would have been pretty phenomenal if we were able to win there in my redshirt sophomore year in 2017. Obviously, Tua had other plans. That would have been insane. Having 3 of the last 6 national championships, that would be something very remarkable in itself. I'm thinking about the talk that he gave to us after the game, and obviously in so many words, he kind of told us, like, I think it was evident that we were the best team, and that we had everything that we needed to win that game, to win the national championship. And that was something that he told us on day one, of fall camp. He's like, we have all the pieces, in place on this team, among the players and the coaches to win a national championship this season. And we just had to believe that. And, sure enough, we got there, and we're, 2nd and 26 away from winning the national championship that night. Yeah. And, he basically just told us, that obviously, we had everything that we needed. We were entirely capable of winning that game. And he also told us, that like that moment doesn't have to define us as players, define us as athletes, and it doesn't have to define, the Georgia program. That can be a moment where you look back and say that was a turning point. And I really do think that it was a turning point where, we got that close, for some of the younger guys that were in that program, that they were there at the time, like you got that close to victory and you got a taste for it, of what it could have been like. And that was something that was a driving force for the guys that were coming in over the next few years where, now they've been able to put all the pieces together again and finish the job. So it was also, the message was kind of like, you don't have to let this define you. And it's going to be about how you respond, that is going to like make or break this program over the next, so many years. And obviously, everyone has kind of responded to it the right way where, now they've won back-to-back national championships.
Yeah. No, that sounds like something Kirby would say. And, actually, it was funny. I saw a clip after that game that we were just talking about. It was a Kirby Smart press conference. He was sitting up there on the stage after that tough loss. And he basically just said, Georgia's not going anywhere.
Exactly.
And they definitely haven't. And I think getting there and playing, like you said, how you guys did, you were the better team the entire game, right? Until that last second, right? And I think that gave that confidence you were talking about, and knowing you can get there, knowing how well you played in that game, just to come up this short. You couldn't have a smaller margin right there.
Yeah.
And in knowing that, I think that's what gave at least, Dog Nation as well, and those sports fans growing up and losing those tough championships. And you said Falcons, like I have never been the same Falcons fan since that Super Bowl, right? Mm-hmm. And that dog loss could have been that way. Georgia could have tucked their tails and went out and didn't play to the level and the standard that Kirby Smart was trying to set, but they have. And the recruiting, obviously, the aspect has always been consistent since Kirby's been, but the way that I think the coaching staff now, we have Todd Monken on offense, and what he's done in the last couple of years has been incredible. And him with Stetson Bennett coming in and playing so well and really taught him. And Stetson Bennett said that he really didn't know football until Todd Monken came.
Yeah.
And now I think he knows football now. I think he knows football now. Build that man a statue right next to yours, I think. Right next to yours, man. What was the if you look back on your career and the games and the big time kicks you made, is there one that stands out specifically? I know you have a couple game winners on your belt. Is there anything that stands out there?
There's a couple. Obviously, the kick that I made at halftime in the Rose Bowl of that playoff season was a big one. Kicking the one in overtime was a big one. I really felt like I just kicked the game winner in the national championship when, and then they got into that opposing drive and we knocked them back so far. I was like, there's no way, the Bama kicker was going to be able to make a field goal and they were going to have to go for it from fourth and forever. That's kind of what I was thinking. And then obviously it changed in a split second, but I really thought that I just kicked like a game winner in overtime with a natty. And then the other one that comes to mind was the one that I kicked against Texas A&M senior year to become the all-time career points leader. And I didn't think about it in the moment. Like the guys had to tell me on the sidelines after I had hit the kickoff, like, because I think I kicked 4 field goals in that game, and that was the third one that I kicked. And so I kicked it, and Camarda, Jake, and Payne were the first 2 to come up and like pat me on the helmet. And then I had to turn around and go get my kickoff tee, go hit the kickoff, and then I came off to the sidelines, and they were like, Rod, that was the kick, dude. You're the all-time leading scorer now. I was like, oh, sick. I didn't even get to but then when I got to, at the end of the game, I got to appreciate it a little bit more. So that's definitely another one that's up there for me.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. And I think what really intrigues me about kicking is the pressure that is put on you guys, right? I think everybody deals with pressure differently. How do you deal with the pressure of making or breaking a game at sometimes, right? It's crazy to see football being played, and then it comes down to one guy sometimes. Well, I mean, one guy makes contact with the ball, but obviously you have the snapper, the holder, definitely have a big job there as well. What do you do to kind of slow down that heart rate and get in that mindset to make a good kick?
I mean, I try to just treat it the same as I would anything else, whether it's a game winner, at the end of the game or end of halftime, or if it's an extra point on the first touchdown in the first quarter, you try to treat every kick the exact same way. You try and go through the exact same, physical process, on the sidelines and the net. You go through the same mental process when you're going out there and you're walking off your steps. Lots of kickers have kind of like, keywords that you try and tell yourself when you're doing your approach, just to kind of occupy your thoughts and your headspace. And so you basically just try and go through all that stuff the exact same way, regardless of the situation, regardless of the kick. And that will help you to, treat it all the same way. And that alleviates some of the pressure, because physically and mentally, you think you're just going out for an extra point, even if it's a, 50-yarder at the end of the Sugar Bowl, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, I think that would be kind of a way you have to do it, right? Just treat every kick the same, because if you kind of sit there and think about the pressure involved, I would break down. I don't know about anybody else, but I'd be shaking. That's incredible, man. And it's great to see you playing NFL. Obviously your injury, and I hope your recovery goes well. And we'd love to see you get back out there. But it was great watching you kick the times you did. And we hope to see that some more from you. And let's go back to this. So you said you were at the national title, right?
Last year.
Okay. Was there any feeling? Did this one feel any different to you? This title? It did for me a little bit, because I guess remember, like, the first one in 42 years. Obviously, the first one in my lifetime as a Georgia fan. So I think that's why they kind of felt different to me. I love them both the same, but it had that different feeling last year. It was like, oh my gosh, we actually did it. And this one was just like, yeah, we're those dudes. Like, we are a dynasty now. Like, this is the dynasty championship. That first one was getting our foot in the door. It felt like to me. I don't know what it felt like for you.
Last year definitely felt different, but for different reasons. Last year I was at the game in person, which was a huge difference. Obviously, at this point last season, I was still with the Colts, and the national championship was in Indy at Lucas Oil Stadium. I was at my home stadium, my first home away from home, so to speak, my first landing spot in the NFL. So it was super cool to actually get to go to the game, to be on the sidelines, just to be with those guys in person, and to interact with them. And, obviously I think the fact that it was Alabama played a part in it different, just because they have been, they've been the last obstacle for so long. They beat us in the national championship in 2017. They beat us in the SEC championship in 2018 to keep us out of the playoffs that year. 2020, obviously, they went undefeated and won the Natty that year. And then, last season had to beat them to win the Natty. This year had to beat them, I didn't have to beat them. It was LSU this year.
Yeah.
But they're always kind of lingering. You always kind of expect that they're going to be one of the boxes on the schedule that you have to tick at one point or another, whether it's regular season, SEC championship, or playoffs. And so they've always been the last hurdle, that we could never get over. And last season, finally being able to do that in the national championship, getting a second shot to prove, to really kind of prove that we were capable of doing it. And for those reasons, it felt a little bit different for me. I wouldn't say that I appreciated it more. I appreciate both of them equally, but for those reasons, it was just a different experience. This year I was watching at home. Obviously I just kind of, I just had my surgery. So, I got my hip brace on right now. So I'm just watching it on TV, but yeah, still appreciate both of them equally. And, hopefully we can tack on a few more here in the next few years.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope if NFL teams are listening, stay off of Kirby's text messages, please. Stay out of those. We don't need that. I don't need that. I don't need that anxiety in my life. Hearing those rumors and had interviews and all. We don't need that. We don't need that. He's good where he's at. I think Georgia has given. I read a report. Georgia has given permission for Kirby to talk to these guys. I hope it doesn't happen. I think it would happen like a Nick Saban goes to the NFL and then he's not able to tell grown men with kids what to do as much. That might be a similar thing. I kind of hope it is. So Kirby at least stays at Georgia. But I think to tack on a couple, if he stays, the way that we recruit and the coaching staff, I think that's one big thing for me, and we talked about it at length this season on the show. And the coaches and analysts, you have Mike Bobo on offense just as an analyst, as one of the best offensive coordinators in the SEC for a long time. He's just your analyst. And then obviously Todd Monken, what he's done, Todd Hartley at the tight end position, bringing in the guys he did, and the way Brock Bowers and Darnell Washington played this year was incredible. And then on defense, obviously having Muschamp and one of the best defensive coordinators in the league for a long time now. He's there with Glenn Schumann. I think that this collection of the coaching staff and the way that they get these guys ready to play on a weekly basis is what's setting Georgia apart right now beyond just the talent. So who knows how many more we'll get to see. I hope it's many, many more, because Georgia fans are going to be a problem this year for a while until somebody knocks us out. And then our schedule next year, what do you think? We have a real shot at three-peating? I do. We just have to get to the playoffs, right? I mean, I don't think anybody's going to knock us off during the regular season, because our toughest game right now is Tennessee. It's at Tennessee. They're obviously missing a lot of guys from that team that just did so well this year. So how are they going to look and rebuild? We usually don't have problems beating Tennessee in Tennessee, but Josh Heupel, I mean, he's going to come out with vengeance, and that team's going to want to beat Georgia. Obviously, Georgia has that target on their back for the rest of time, really, from what we've been doing to people the last, and then TCU, the 65-7. Whoever played Georgia this year and got closer was just bragging that they didn't get killed like that. That's all they can put in their book, is that, hey, we didn't lose to Georgia by 58 points. So yeah, we should have been in the championship. But just what Georgia has next year and the easy schedule right now, right? You never know what can happen, what team can look like. But Florida is another one, but they obviously haven't. They've been struggling, and they struggled this year pretty badly. So we'll have to see. But I mean, you get the SEC championship, and even if you lose, they're probably still going to get in, right? I mean, if we're going undefeated and we play somebody at the SEC championship and we end up losing, probably still going to be in. What do you think that in Georgia, in your mind, will look like without that Stetson Bennett factor and those legs? And I think Carson Beck, the way that he controls the offense when he's given opportunities, he's looked pretty good.
Yeah. So there are a few questions to address there.
Yeah, sorry, that was long-winded.
One question that I have is Auburn on the road next season as well?
Oh, Auburn is on the road, yes.
Okay, so that's the first one that I would say is never a gimme. It doesn't matter how good or how bad Auburn is playing. They're a different team.
You got Hugh Freeze over there.
Yeah, Auburn can be a different animal when you have to play them at their place. And obviously, we learned that the hard way in 17 when we went there. You know, we kind of were tooting our horn, thinking that nobody was going to be able to touch us after we got on a roll there, and then they humbled us very quickly when we went to Jordan-Hare. And so that's a game that I feel like you cannot look past any given season. Whenever you have to play at Auburn, that's one that you got to make sure that you buckle your chin strap extra tight and tie your shoelaces up real good, because they could bring it when they play at that place. Tennessee, obviously, I think is going to be very good. They performed very well in their bowl game, and I think kind of gave everyone a glimpse as to their potential for next season. So obviously, I think they're going to be very respectable as well. South Carolina also at the end of the season this year. Spencer Rattler kind of hitting a groove. I think he showed people the potential that they have, where they could throw up 40, 50 points on any given Saturday. So you can't look past them either. And then Florida, Georgia, anything can happen any given year. It doesn't matter if both teams are, ranked in the top 25, top 10. If neither of them are ranked, one team's ranked, one team's not, doesn't matter. When you play against Florida, you have to bring your A game, and you have to expect that it's going to be a tough matchup. So those are the games that, I definitely think are going to present the biggest challenges. And they're going to have to, play their best every single week. Obviously, we had a couple, close games this year. Well, maybe not close games, but, they weren't blowouts like people were expecting. I think back to the Missouri game where, I think Todd had to kick 4 field goals, and almost all of them were inside of 35 yards. So they were almost all red zone, field goals where we just weren't able to find the end zone for whatever reason. Those you have to be, you have to be ready, and championship caliber teams will find ways to win, whether it's 65-7 in the national championship or whether it's whatever, 31-24 against Missouri in week 8 of the season. The best teams are going to find a way to win regardless. And they're going to have to do that again especially against those opponents that I mentioned next season.
Yeah.
Obviously, if they are able to, keep a clean sheet heading into the SEC championship game next season, I imagine it would probably be a similar case to these past 2 years, where if they win, they're likely going to be the number one seed. If they lose, just based on how they performed over the course of the regular season, the committee, hopefully would still value what they've done over the course of the regular season enough to put them into the playoffs anyways. Mm-hmm. And you make the playoffs, then it's like a whole new season. If you can get to the dance, then, you've got a chance. I didn't mean to rhyme there, but if you can make it into the last four, then, that's all you need. And then at that point, it's anyone's game. It's a toss up for anybody, because at that point you've got, basically a month to prepare. It's an opponent that you probably haven't seen before, that you may not have played for several years. Obviously, we played TCU in 2016, in Coach Smart's first year, but they were a completely different team at this point. So,
yeah,
it's always a new opponent, always new schemes that you have to prepare for. Maybe you've got a few more plays that you're going to throw in that you've been trying to, hold on to for just the right moment that you might get to unleash in the playoffs. But I do think that the Dogs have a very good chance to three-peat. I just don't want us to count our chickens before we hatch. I want, I want everyone to appreciate the work that these guys have done over the last 2 years to win these last two national championships, not take them for granted, and just appreciate whatever body of work they put together next season.
Yeah, no, and that's something now. I'm worried about Georgia fans, Dog Nation, getting a little too high on the horse here. Yeah. And then if something happens, they want to fire everybody. Because I have an Alabama alum friend, and that's how he is. I mean, he was like, get rid of Nick Saban, And I was like, dude, how many titles do you have, man? Get out of here. Just absolutely get out of here. You got like a 95% win percentage at home in Tuscaloosa. Get out of here, man. But so I think Georgia Dog Nation needs to watch for that. And you made some good points. Even you in the SEC, you don't know what's going to happen. So that is a good point. I think what we need to see from Carson Beck, and I'll get you out of here in just a minute. I think what we need to see from Carson Beck is under pressure play. He hasn't played under pressure. He hasn't had to. How does he perform in a late fourth quarter game on the road? Let's say at Auburn, a situation like that, or down in Jacksonville, you got to go make plays to win. How does he perform there? Well, I think that is a test that I want to see early in the season, to be honest, so he can experience that and build off of that from how he plays and see himself in that position, and maybe they can work through that. If he doesn't play well, if he does, great, obviously. But that's awesome, man. I really appreciate your time and jumping on here and celebrating with us. 2 national titles in a row, coming back to Athens. And the classic city has 2 in a row. I can't believe it. It's awesome. I'm smiles all day. So I appreciate your time, Rodrigo, and good luck with your hip surgery and your recovery there. We're looking forward to seeing you back on the field soon.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Awesome. See you guys. Dog Nation, you heard it here from Rodrigo Blankenship, Hot Rod, one of the best Georgia kickers in history, that if you get to the dance, you got a chance. Yes. It was great speaking with Hot Rod there, and we really appreciate his time and hope to have him on here soon again. It was that championship game, guys. It was incredible seeing Georgia dominate the way they did. And I think the only thing you can take away from that is just how Georgia plays on the line of scrimmage in the front 7, especially the offensive line played amazing. The defense, of course, 7 points allowed to a top 5 scoring offense in the country. TCU did it against some good defenses, but they couldn't get anything done. Georgia executed well on both sides of the ball, obviously, and special teams contributed as well. You look at Brett Thorson, what he was able to do in that game. 1 punt. Great job, Brett. Way to be. Georgia didn't let him play much, did he? And then Jack Podlesny missed that last PAT. That was a big decision there, and a big outcome from that last PAT. Georgia should have went for 2, I guess. But I think from both sides of the ball, including special teams, Georgia played about as good as you could, right? And Max Duggan weren't able to get going. The run game was stuffed. Max Duggan had barely any time to throw. The pressure Georgia created was astounding. Ohio State and Georgia in the Peach Bowl was the national title. Reminds me of Georgia, Alabama in 2012, and how Georgia played Alabama so close. Alabama goes on to just destroy Notre Dame in the BCS national title game, and Georgia's sitting there knowing, yeah, we would have won the national title if we would have won that game. Ohio State's in the same position. Georgia, the way they played in that Peach Bowl and then moved on and just continued to really execute how they did in that second half, right? You look at the second half of then the Peach Bowl and moving on to the national title, and Georgia didn't miss a beat. And the way these players played and the guys who stayed to contribute to this title, it's just amazing. And I think Georgia and Kirby Smart have something really special in this team in Athens and what they can do moving on. So really next on the schedule for the offseason here is signing day. So traditional signing day, we had early national signing day. Georgia, and that most of the teams get most of their recruits in that time period. Now we're moving on traditional signing day. Georgia's in there running for a couple of key guys, so keep that in mind, and we'll break that down here moving forward. Other than that, we'll hit some roster updates for you guys and see where we stand headed into next year right now as the roster stands now. We'll be talking about that moving forward. As always, we really appreciate your time for clicking that watch if you're on YouTube or listen wherever you get your podcast. The Pulse Sports Network. We got StuCast, my other podcast, on there. Give it a listen. Stu and Rob do a great job with your NFL, college basketball, college football, a lot of betting outlooks. They do it well. They do it really well. So log into that Pulse Sports Network, same YouTube channel. And also UGA Wire, as always, UGAWire.com, part of the USA Today's College Wire Network. And also UGA Football Live on Twitter, UGA Wire on Instagram, JC_Shelton_ on Twitter. Let me know what you think. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and if you're listening, rate, subscribe, review. Thank you so much, guys. Have a great week. Go Dogs.